Hi, this is Mike Young of Noble Warriors. You're about to hear a message entitled Tools You Should Own If You're in Men's Ministry, presented by Todd Schlomann. Todd is a church relations specialist with Noble Warriors. He's from Midlothian, Virginia. This equipping workshop was part of the Iron Sharpens Iron Men's Conference hosted by Noble Warriors at Grace Church of Fredericksburg on Saturday, March 9th, 2013 in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I pray the message will challenge and encourage you as you walk with Christ and lead your family.
So we're going to be splitting our time up into two parts. Leadership development, that's about 25% of the time, and the rest, 25 to 35% of the time, the rest is going to be looking at actual material. We're going to show about at least 4 different clips, depending on how our time goes, of actual, because I hate commercials. You know, the hype that they do, hype on like even 33. It's bang, 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 bang. And then you look at the actual series, and that's not what the commercial was. Well, we're going to look at 6 minutes chunks of several of these DVD series that I've really enjoyed. I've used them all, so I'm not doing this by intellectual capacity, because if you knew me, you knew that was going to happen anyway. Before we get going, let's just take time and recognize that, yeah, materials are great, but unless we're transforming hearts and minds, we might as well be the Lions Club. And that's what scares me about this type of class. It's about the intellectual part of looking at materials, but we got to remember the whole part of this is going back to Christ transforming hearts, using this to open and loosen up soils in their hearts so they'll accept Him and be followers of Jesus. Yep, not a problem. You need so let's pray for God. Yeah, I'm passionate about what you've taught me, and allow me to speak truth. May you allow me to have wisdom to explain what you want, Lord, because we recognize that you're the one that does this whole thing. You bring truth to us. Otherwise we would just be sinners, and we are sinners. But we just follow that role all the way into it. It's your Holy Spirit in our lives that's transforming us and making us difference. So again, we just ask that we use this material wisely to honor you, to glorify you, and all that we do. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. Not much seats. Do we have any seats? There's a Bible there.
Somebody sitting here?
Yeah, it's my Bible.
Okay. Scott's sitting there.
Sorry about that.
I know who that was.
We got a couple extra chairs.
Wait for it. More coming.
Last year we actually had them on the ground.
That's them out here in the hallway, remember? One
Yeah, that's what we had it up at that time.
Wait, more coming still.
Don't breathe heavy because we want it cool in here.
Save the oxygen. Okay, everybody, hold your breath.
Hold your breath.
What 5 you looking for?
We're full.
What room is it?
Tim, he's at the chapel.
He's in chapel?
You go down the hall, turn right, and it's way back there. Just keep going. Yeah, you can't miss it. There we go. There's one for anybody else need one. There's 2 there. Excuse me? Did you get one?
No, I haven't.
I thought it was okay, but I didn't remember.
See one back there? Anybody else? Good to go.
These cards too.
Okay. Let me just.
You got another blue card?
Oh, yep, you got more blue cards.
One.
There's a couple more blue cards. We'll get there. And anybody else need a blue card?
Blue card?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. My name's Todd Schlomann. I work with Noble Warriors. I actually also work at a church plant called Village Church out in Midlothian. Came here about 2.5 years ago from Oregon. My son and his best buddy from college started a new church, and they said, "Hey, these people over 40 years old, what do we do with people over 40? Are they worth anything?" I was under 40. But you're probably thinking, he's got a good point. So we actually resigned my position out there as a pastor and came out here, raised missionary support, because the new church plant, they have a lot of excitement, but they don't have a lot of maturity. And I'm not talking about my son and his friend. I'm talking about just the typical people that are coming into a new church plant. So we started about 2.5 years ago. I think our first Sunday we had about 30 people there. And this, about a month, Christmas, we moved into our new place off of Janitor Road in Midlothian. And we have a little over 200 people now. So we're pretty excited about it. It's been a fun ride. It's a little hard, though, because my son is the executive pastor. That has always been my role. And now I am just dad. and he tells me what to do. And he is healthy. He has no problem telling me, you're wrong, and I'm right, and I'm the pastor, and you're going to listen.
But you're always mad.
Yeah, well, I try to pull that one out every now and then. You know. And he goes, no, I'm right this time. So I've grown a lot. Because I had to deal with the issue, actually, of God, have you called me out here or haven't you? And do I have to adjust to you or do you have to adjust to me? And I really have to adjust. Okay, God, I have to be submissive to my son. Now, it's not that it's that controversial. I wouldn't have moved out otherwise. But there are some times where it just really has pushed me. I come from a military background. This just hasn't been a role. I haven't been in a private role in a long time. But yeah, it's been fun to be 2.5 years later into it. Sorry, Ray.
I'm standing here and listen.
We could probably have we have a
Is there
chair.
one
We
over
can put
there?
you right over here. You're not going to see the screen too good.
He can sit right in front of me.
Yeah. Here, Ray. You gotta
Come over here. You
have one of those.
Thank you.
And a blue card. Get you. Feel good.
This man got him. Should I be scared?
So, that's just a little bit. I want to give you a little bit about my background. I work with Noble Warriors probably 3/4 time now, full time with them. It's been a blast working. I've always been in this mindset without Kenny Luck's comment, without the man of God, there's no great work of God. And I butchered that a little bit, but that's the principles there. That it's the men of the church. Now, my wife is a great theological mind, okay? I value my wife. And when I have a theological question, I go, no, where's that found again? Okay? We don't ditz women. Actually, we praise women. We support women. But it's the men in the church that have fallen. It's not the women. They're filling a void that we've left. So that's a little... now, just this is our mindset of Noble Warriors. To get society right, you got to get the church right. To get the church right, you have to get the families right. To get the families right, you have to get marriages right. And to get the marriages right, you got to get the men right. It always comes down to the men. Robbie did a great job talking in this morning. It was the man's responsibility. We have to reject passivity, one of the struggles all men struggle with. This comes out of the book No Man Left Behind. Now, this is a resource. I give you a little information about the book. That book's in there. That is an outstanding book for leadership development. We're going to be first talking about leadership development. I would never start a new men's ministry without my leadership team not going through this book, talking about, reading about it. It gets your head wrapped around men, not church. One of the struggles we have is we have a church mentality, and I'm somebody called me the blue-collar pastor one time because I didn't grow. Do I have Bible college? Yes. I have some seminary? Yes. But most of my life was in the military. So when I come into church, I don't look at it as the seminary guy. I look at the blue-collar, the guy from out in the streets. So I'm always looking to develop teams, work teams. This is one of the better books. Is it the best read book? Not really, okay? But it's more of a textual book on how to think about men's ministry. Anybody here read it? Okay? You better like this, right? No, Ray didn't like, I don't think you liked this one that much. Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind.
I got a lot out of it, but my problem was with the implementation.
Yes.
It's truthful. I love it.
Now, you bring out, and we actually talked about this earlier, there's no perfect book out there. If I pull out one or two concepts, it's a winner! Yeah. So if you think I've got a book that's going to answer all your questions, no. Sorry, just ain't there. Now, how many of you are familiar with Noble Warriors? Okay, we're going to just do like a 30-second commercial of Noble Warriors. Because I think this is, I do have a pointer. Walking stick. This will come in handy. A man's pointer from Alaska. Noble Warriors, we come and we support the church all different ways. We have conferences. Just last week I had a church. Hey Joe. Church come in with 4 of their leaders for about 3 hours, sitting around our conference table, had lunch with them, saying, "What? We got problems. We don't know where to even go. You say start a men's ministry, but what's step one?" And so they came up with a list of their issues, and we talked for 3 to 4 hours just about how to make them successful. Because our philosophy is we're dealing with the church. The church leadership deals with the men deals with the family deals with the community. That's our concept. We want to make the church, you guys, be highly successful. We don't really care if anybody knows in your church, well, that's not quite true, about noble warriors. we have egos too. But the key issue is we don't have a program. We come in to help you guys be successful wherever you're at. That we go across denominations. That's a little strange, by the way, sometimes for us, and I'm sure for you guys too. But we want you to be successful in your ministry, so that's why we focus in on the men, and we help the pastor and the leadership of the church be successful. Now, can a pastor be a female? Sure. Yeah, we've had that, and they recognize most people. I haven't met one female pastor that hasn't said, "I want strong men. I've got to have strong men." I don't have strong men. Usually, when we see them, if they're strong, they're not coming to noble warriors. So that's a little bit of how we do. We use our resources, our energy. A lot of our we look at all the curriculum out there, and we say, "Hey, this is for what you need. This works really good. For what you need, this works good." Guy called up last week and said, "Hey, I'm doing a sportsman dinner for our guys. We need a speaker." Oh, here's 3 guys that we know that would really, for your church, you'd love them. Great, that's the resource. We love doing that type of thing. Okay, now, again, for we always start out with this mentality. What is your pastor's vision to impact your community? How do men fit into the pastor's vision? Men's ministry is not isolated. We want it to be critical part of what what the pastor wants. Now, we know that some churches, the pastors, they have all these programs, they're all great programs, and all they say is, "I'll bless you, go for it." Okay? We recognize that, but we want them to be an integral part, so we want you to always be leaning back towards the pastor. Say, "No, but I know you bless us, we know you want us, but what's your heart? We want to be in step with what you're doing, not isolated." And we think that's a critical part, because eventually we want all the pastors to be actively involved in your men's ministry. Does that mean they're doing it? No. When I say active, they attend it. They're part of the small groups. They're doing stuff with you all the time? Not necessarily. But that's why we always will send you back. Ask your pastor how you can participate. Now, nickel prayer. You'll be hearing about this later on. How many of you know about the nickel prayer? And how many of you have done the nickel prayer? Okay, how did it work?
It worked okay. Our pastor's gone now, but
Okay, it didn't work.
it didn't work that well.
Now, is that a prayer that's not worth a dime?
Yeah, that's right. We better explain this. Ernest, you do the nickel prayer at your church? Just so, it's the idea is to give your pastor a nickel. You don't have to say anything, you just hand it to him, and he already knows that I prayed for you 5 times this week. So the idea is maybe even on his podium up front, however he's preached, whatever he's preached upon, he finds a whole bundle of nickels there. He doesn't have to see it from you. He just knows that, man, there's 20 nickels. There's 20 guys praying for me this week. I think Christian love leans towards people. We don't wait for people. We go towards them. Now, Ernest, did you have the work? How'd you pass?
We did a couple times. I came last year.
Okay.
So I don't know about it. We did that a couple times last year. It was pretty good. For the most part, the men that started out from here, they kind of left the church for whatever reason it was. So the process actually stopped.
Okay. It's just a powerful way to talk into your pastor's life without literally saying anything. And you'll be learning more about that later. But again, we think pastors are critical. Now, I'm going to show you my toolbox. Can't look. Let's see. Anybody know what this is? Okay, there's some leads on it. I stole it. I haven't been an aircraft mechanic for a while. This is a mag tester. How about, now these are fun. These. Where did I use it the other day? Anyway, anybody know what these are? Clecos! You're giving yourself away a little bit. These are Clecos. They hold metal together. Here's a fun one. Nibbler. You cut a hole into something, you can nibble out a pattern or whatever, damage, whatever. Here's the final piece. This is measuring your aileron. diffraction, because your ailerons better all both be simultaneous. There's certain degree patterns. You getting a clue? This box is designed for who?
Aircraft mechanic.
Aircraft mechanic. You know, we got a real problem in our churches. We all think we got the same toolboxes, but toolboxes are very unique and specialized. You know, I've got a friend who's a general contractor, and you look in his trailer, and he's got one big tub toolbox for drywall. He's got another one for electrical, and when he goes into a job, he jigs this whole tub. Now, sometimes there's similar tools in both. Might be a hammer in both, but there's always the specialized because he knows exactly what his job is. One of the key things in leadership development you've got to figure out is who your men are. We really don't know who our men are. Let me continue on. Let's see. So before you have to understand who your men are, where they're coming from. Now and this is the problem I see in churches. Everybody's mentality is, staff particularly, I'm a guy, I don't need to know what men are. I mean, it's just sort of silly. You go to your seminaries, you go to colleges. There's only one college I know that has a class for men's ministry, Bethel College, in St. Paul, Minneapolis. St. Paul, Minnesota. Anyway, up there. We all make this up. Now there's women's groups, there's youth, there's class you can take on anything, but not on men. Well, how's that working for us? What's here's a quick thing. Before you can fill up your toolbox, you have to know the 3 laws of filling up a toolbox. You have to know your men. Second law, you got to know your men. And then finally, the third law, you got to know your men. We have a church culture. And we say, hey, we want to reach all these guys. Ray was telling me about a church that he was dealing with, and 30 guys came to this church. Well, how many guys were going to the church? 100. And they were really excited about that. Well, I don't know. I call that a failing rate, 30%. How many of you would be happy on a test only getting 30% correct? Would you be happy, a batting average, 30%? I'm not a baseball guy. That's nothing to brag about. Actually, baseball is not bad. Yeah, okay, I'm not perfect on this job. But we look at it and we say, why aren't those 70? We tend to look at it, and what Ray's comment to me earlier was, we look at the 30 and say, isn't this wonderful? You need to study the 70 and figure out what's happening. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get 100% of them, but usually we have church culture, we don't understand. That's why I love the church plants. I've worked in other church plants because they come in with a whole freshness. There's not a culture there. They're developing culture. They're developing DNA. It's really hard when you're in a church, and most of us are, that have been around for a while. You're dealing in a culture. Do you see men for who they are? Do you understand what they are doing? Most men will only do 2 things a week. They're going to go to church and they're going to do one thing else. Well, of our cultures, now some churches, maybe a dedicated guy will do 3 things. But most times it's only going to be 2 things a week. Well, then we call them to choir, we call them to this. You look at your church calendar and you say, well, why won't they come out to my men's Saturday morning project? Well, you've had them Wednesday night, you had them Monday night, and you had them Sunday. How many times do we expect our guys to come out? We have an expectation. What's the one thing I look at and we say, what is the most important thing we want our guys to do? We want them to grow as disciples. Sometimes it's hard calls in churches, and I, as a pastor, I had to make that call and say, these are great programs. It doesn't meet my vision. Our vision as a church to disciple men, because we understood what they were going to need. And now I'm going to step on toes, okay? But like Saturday morning, how many of you, no, I'm not going to ask this because I'm going to step on this a little bit. A lot of church ministries have a Saturday morning's breakfast, and they can't figure out why they can't get the young guys. That's 70% of the guys there. Understand what the young guys are. They're working, most of them 60 hours a week because they're new at their jobs. They have lousy salaries, poor salaries, because again, they're new at their jobs. They might have a family, they've got young kids, and their wife are saying, if it's a stay-at-home wife, you're going to leave again? You've got to be kidding. Not a chance. I've been with these kids all week long, and you want to go to this breakfast. It's good for me. Yeah, she doesn't believe that a bit. Or she works. She goes, no, I've been working all week long. You're not gonna dump the kids on me right now. We're doing, aren't we partners? Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why it's hard to get young guys. We had a golf tournament, and the guys were like, we want the young guys. Well, the problem was, now, there are hardcore golfers, young guys, they'll be there. But the average golfers, we looked at them, and what were they? They're gray-haired and retired, because that's what they did. Okay, we are perfectly designed to get what we get. I forget the business guru that said that. But it's so simple, but churches don't believe that. Again, the church that I had in last week, I came up and I said, here's a problem. Oh, well, we just don't believe you. Yeah, but here's all these pieces. Missed your foot. That's pretty good. Thanks. You are perfectly designed to get what you get. So if you're not going to change, okay, you're not going to change. You've got a plan. We literally, the leadership staff, every 6 months would say, okay, what have we done different? Now, just change for the sake of change isn't good, by the way. We're changing because we're trying to attract, we're trying to communicate different ways, we're trying to understand. And sometimes this is a journey of blind leading the blind. You know, it's like, it's taking little steps. And you know, okay, we didn't mess up there. Take another couple steps. Oh, get your step down. Your foot gets stepped on. Try back. It's not a for sure thing. It's trial and error. I love it. It's an experiment. Guys love trials and errors. Experiment. Don't be afraid of it.
How do you do your assessment then? Because in trial and error, it's inefficient. You can lose people, you can waste time. What type of assessment tools are there out there to discover what a men's ministry needs in a particular church?
We're going to be going into that. But wisdom is always part of this.
Okay.
You don't do this out of ignorance. I just want to show the simple facts to show we're in trouble, guys. Okay, and these are actually the facts I use for church planning. Typical church in America is 60% women, 40% men. That's just for every new church that opens, 4 closes. Now, I was part of a group out in the Northwest, and at their Northwest, Alaska, Washington, Idaho, and Oregon was part of that region. And they're like, we had 26 new churches. Isn't that exciting? And, oh, yeah, we applaud, yay! And then somebody said, how many churches closed down this year? 24. It wasn't as impressive as we thought. Now, but not, the stats are actually for every 1, 4 closes. 19.4% decline in church attendance in the past decade alone. Only 1 county in America has a greater church population than it did 10 years ago. You think of all these huge mega churches that you hear about. Oh, we must be gaining. No, we're not gaining.
So what county is it?
You know, they didn't say. I believe it was in Texas somewhere. But we're doing a lot of shifting around, is what we hear about. 15,000, now this is interesting because we say, all men just aren't religious. 15,000 people per month convert to Islam in America. There's something there, we're just missing it. Only 6% of churches are growing. Not real connect. So, and I say that to say that there's a lot of issues, and I'm not saying it's all men, by the way. But we got to own a lot. We got to recognize there's an issue. Are we going to change, or are we going to just say we're content? Okay, now here's just quick things because time's going to run, and feel free to ask questions. By the way, I tend to go fast because there's just so many things out there. Yeah.
Anyway, we're gonna be able to get copies of this PowerPoint. Sure looks good, and I can't take notes fast.
I have my card here, and if you email me, I'd be happy to send it to you.
One question.
Yeah.
On the data you showed a few seconds ago.
Yes.
About 15,000 people per month.
Yes.
Converted to Islam. Were they able to do any type of investigation as to what is the main factor that causing them to convert from whatever religion to Islam?
Yeah, the survey that I looked at didn't explain out anything, so I don't know. And that was the guy from Lifeway that's in charge of church plants. I'm trying to think of his name. Quite a hot item, church planting guy. Anyway, you know, we read these things. Matthew 28, the great, go therefore and make disciples, all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them. And again, we see this teaching and training. You know, one thing I've learned in the military and training, unless they get it, you haven't taught. We can pretend to do all the things we do, But if they're not, and teaching discipleship is really about that. I love it when the hot light comes on a guy's eyes. I can see his heart's transforming. He's catching it, and he's going to blow by me. Then I know we've taught. So many times in men's ministry, we do a great job teaching. Are we teaching? We're doing the same thing all the time. I think sometimes we got to blow out of the, there's a guy doing a thing for family devotions, blowing up your family devotions. Sometimes we need young people, we need guys of all ages, ethnicities, to give us insight on how to develop programs. I'm getting you just to think. This is just to get you to think. Now, you got this great little blue thing out. If you look at this list here, which one best describes Christ?
Right side.
Thank you. That's about 80% say that. Now you're going to get nailed. That's from the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Did I get that right? I always, Mars and Venus. That's Venus. Mars is the men's side, the left side. Interesting that and I've done this with my small group, and they're younger. My small group's the average age is 27. I've got 20 of them. They all pick the right side.
That's because the churches are making the church for women, not for men.
There's a real struggle there. Now, is a guy should be tender and soft? Yeah, I think Christ is both of these. He knew when he needed to be mean. Yes, the whip, mean. He did it righteously though. There's a trick on that. I get it. He had the Christ thing going. But what in the world? Why would the disciples, the fishermen, follow this guy if he was the right side? There's something on the left side that these fishermen that were sort of the rough and ready of the group, the biker guys of the day, saw. They didn't see the right side. They saw something on the left side. We're developing that. So I've done this with my small groups just to get conversations going, saying, how does this fit into our men's ministry? That's your problem, not mine. Now, I love this book, Why Men Hate Going Here. Anybody's read that? How did you like it? Yeah, positive. Did you have any issues? Some people are really bothered by it.
I agree with it.
Okay. I sort of surprised me the first time I asked that question. Somebody said I hated it. I was like, wait a minute, I wasn't prepared. But see why sometimes people hate this, and it took me a while to remember this. When you say this, are you telling them all your ministry you've been wrong? Because it was always leaders that always had problems with this. And we got to be careful sometimes on that. I was in a church that we're transitioning from a very traditional style to contemporary style, and it was hard. And all they heard, the people, and it's funny, it wasn't all old, by the way, but some people like the organ, the traditional style, and we're not. This isn't a judgment. This is just how this was going. And all they heard was bad and good. All the way we've done it was bad. And no, we're just changing. No matter what I could do, I couldn't argue that point. That in their hearts, all they're hearing is, you're telling us what we've been doing in this church for all these years is bad, and you're going to give us the good stuff, the right stuff. And even though that wasn't our heart at all, it was important for me to hear that, because how I communicated changed drastically. So, and I say this particularly with pastors, leadership of churches. When you come and say, hey, I got this great information, they're going to tend to hear bad, good. What I've been doing is bad. And we're just saying, no, it's time to maybe to change. Maybe not.
Sir, just to play on words, I think always when we hear change, we do that grudgingly. I think the key word to implement change is to say we're going to enhance the ministry. We're going to enhance, build upon what we've already done. Just the word.
But words are powerful. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For us, we said, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on 30-year-olds, 32 years old. And so we got to change that. Because don't you want your grandkids and your kids to love coming to church? Are you willing to help? And that was our bend. And yes, I really want that. Now, did they all like it? No. Did a lot of them, though, do it and it changed eventually? Yes. Because it wasn't about them, it was about their kids and their grandkids. But words are powerful. And you got to be careful. Now, I tend to blow, you'll notice, personality type. And when I heard those guys saying, you're telling us we're wrong, it just hurt my heart, because I was like, no, anything. I just want you to, we want to reach this world. And we're not. Look at our stats. We haven't grown. We're not growing. We're dying. If we don't change, we got to do something. Could it be just the same? Here's another example of this. We had a secretary. She'd been there 15 years. The mother of the church. Okay, that was her title. I mean, it wasn't her title, but people called her that. She had no artistic ability, no she was in the past, okay? We needed somebody that was creative, artsy type thing, to do bulletins, PowerPoint, just communications in this generation. We had to let her go. You fired me. No, you're just being laid off because we need something. We explained why. You're firing me. She was a friend. And it was like, there was nothing, and I said, I understand the feeling. You can't argue their feelings. And you think about it, layoffs feel like you're getting fired. They could say whatever they want. The economy's bad, the whatever. You don't have a job. So words are really powerful. Do it slowly.
She couldn't be trained?
Nah, we tried. For way too many years we tried. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed like with like old and new is like, cause I do a lot of worship. That's like one of the main things I do, and the hardest part is changing the music. Cause you have a mixed congregation. So you're like, should I stay with the older music or should I go with new contemporary music? But then you see a lot of bands that are taking older songs and making them more upbeat, and they're like, hey, I know this song still, so you're still making them happy. Yeah. You're just changing just a tad.
Yes, and that's powerful. By the way, just on the other side of this, we're not going to even discuss it, but there's a list of the characteristics up top. And the bottom, these are the type of people that tend to go to this type of characteristics. So for women, older adults, security is very important for women. That's always in counseling women. I always thought, guys, you understand her security, and this is how you're not. But we see that's description of our churches tends to be that way. Now, this is why a church plant tends to have a lot of guys. We probably have 60% guys in our church. It was a real problem. We have a lot of greeters. We have like a dozen greeters. I got a girl out there, yes, because they're all guys. It was just really, I was pleading with someone, please come out and greet, because it just looks a little strange. I mean, a dozen guys out there. But look, list 2, risk, change, conflict. Yeah, you'd say you love it. It's never happy with anything. Adventure, competition, daring, pleasure. Those are man traits. That's why your sons need to see this in them, because they get all the, anyway. Young adults, men, they love challenges and they're oriented. So just again, give you a perspective of how churches are perceived. We got to keep moving. Now here's a clip. This is a great book. It comes in a DVD. Any men's leadership team here? Here, I have one. Whoa, you got it. Here you go. Here's a DVD of it. I had 2 DVDs. While I love the DVD, I do reading. I struggle with reading. I'm severely dyslexic. Now this DVD, it's about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. I can't think. 2 parts to it. One is what we're going to look at. The first part is why we have problems, the characteristics in churches that causes men not to like them, or men not to like church. The other half is this is how you can change. So it's not all gloom and doom. Now you're going to see some of this. You're going to say, come on, that's a little carried away. Come on. And he is. I'm going to try. I'm in Alaska for 18 years, and this guy that wrote this book's from Alaska, so I got to cheer for him. But it's a great leadership book. I love taking leadership teams through this. Okay, this week we're going to watch this, and what do you think about it? Next week we'll watch this. Now let's see if this works. Okay, so this is a couple minutes of the video.
In adult class, you've got to be a good reader, right? Because a lot of reading takes place. Well, let's take a look at them. There they are. You've all sat on those hard metal chairs, haven't you? Under those fluorescent lights with your Bible open. All right, well, here they are. There's Tom and Tina. They're reading from their Bibles. Let's take a look at the fact. The fact is, men are not as good at reading as women are.
Can you hear in the back?
Men are diagnosed with reading disorders at 4 times the rate of women. Male literacy in this country is going down every year. So, at the end of one round, the score is Tina 1, Tom nothing. Sunday school skill number 2 is this: speaking and expressing ideas.
IT guy.
Right, here we are. They're talking about a Bible passage, and Tina's just waxing eloquent. Tom's sitting there looking at the book of, looks like Ecclesiastes.
It's overheating, I think, is my
Let's
Mac
take a look at the
wouldn't do this.
facts. The average woman speaks 20 to 25,000 words in a day, whereas the average man speaks 7 to 10,000 words in a day. Women are better at talking.
You just stop it and restart it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Than men are.
There we go.
There he is.
There it is.
Beautiful owls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see.
You have to know your Bible, right? The people that know their Bibles do better in church. Now let's look at, oh, look at that. You've been there before. That's why you're laughing. Here's the fact. Women are 29% more likely to read their Bibles regularly than men. Why? Because women are better readers. Okay, so at the end of round 3, scores Tina 3, Tom nothing. Let's look at skill number 4. Finger dexterity. Now what's that got to do with going to Sunday
Close your
school?
eyes. It goes back.
Let's take a look. You got to look up a lot of passages in a lot of books, right? Now look at these fingers here. They're like sausages. Look at those things. How's he supposed to flip through those skinny...
Okay. That's driving me crazy, guys. I'm sorry. Let's go back and see if I can try this. Yeah, the audio was great.
Just find it, if you can just find that video in your C drive, play it and start
Yeah.
from there, probably be better off.
Use the hammer.
We're gonna just pretend. We're gonna move on. Okay, that gives you a little sample, though. It's very humorous. It's a really good video. Again, he goes through this comparison, how men look at church and how women look at church. One of the things he's going to talk about is the social time after church, the coffee time, the communication time. Women love that. Guys want a cup of coffee because they got to hold something because they don't feel comfortable. It gives them a little security. We talk about signing up for men's ISI. You tell a woman, hey, they're in the back corner of the church. There's a sign-up place for the women's conference. They'll all find it. Guys, we tell them, put it right dead center of the foyer, make this big board, because we're different. That's all it is. Guys need that. The gals love the social events. The guys, now, do we need social events? We need community. Christ, right from the beginning, was the Trinity from the days of the creation. Everything about God's culture is about community. We have to figure out how to do it and do it the guy's way of doing it. Like Mike up there, our trophy, a sword. It just speaks masculinity. Everybody, I haven't had anybody that says, I can't believe you got a sword. Everybody goes, cool, can I have it? We're trying to figure out how do we speak in Noble Warriors to men. Well, that's what you got to do. Now, and this is all leadership development. Here's a critical part. Pointer back. When we talk about discipleship, we always make this assumption that we're all about the same age. Big problem. I hear guys they come in and say, hey, we've got this great discipleship program going. We've got this study 14 weeks, and we're going to do this next study 12 weeks. Well, that's great, except most of your guys are infants. Now, maybe there's better words for this, and that's not very masculine, okay? I just haven't figured out anything better. And he wrote the book, Real Life, best book on discipleship I've seen. We have infants, children, young adults, and parents. And the idea is then they go make more infants. By the way, the cycle continues. We have to recognize that our men are at all different levels. So what you're going to do for your Bible study may reach this group really great. Infants, it may not. Well, sometimes you have to have something for infants. And these people need to go to it because they're adults and they need to be taking care of the infants. And what do they say? I just want a good Bible study. Come on, a little homework. They're so wimpy. Well, they're not understanding. Their job is to grow infants. You know, if I hit that, I'm in trouble. They put this up yesterday, this TV, so I was like, I'm being very gentle. But understand, you guys are on all different levels. So when you have activities, who are you trying to focus in on? Let me give you another way to look at this. And that book, by the way, Real Life Discipleship, again, it's in your handout. All these books that I'm showing you are in your handout. Best book, they have a workbook that goes with this. If you want to understand discipleship, how to do it, this church does it outstanding. It's from Idaho. Been to their church. It's just been amazing. But very basic. I love his reading. It's very simple. I like that. Reading. Now here's a simple concept that I found it's a light bulb moment for me. What's the biggest group you have at your men's ministry? What's the activity you're doing? Breakfast. 33. Big group. Largest group you can have. What's
400.
400? And what do you do at that?
Oh, we do just about everything.
Okay. Usually, the largest the group, the less spiritual activity it is. Ours was a shotgun shoot. We had like 9 trap throwers, and man, we could get 100+ guys out there with their friends. We had a long-range range with a M4 at it, pistol range. Everybody wanted to come because we taught as well as trained. Spiritual depth? No, none. yeah, okay. Why? Because most of them were infants. Okay? Understand that if you want everyone, it's just basically a social group. That's okay. This is where I had to figure that out. I had to realize that people need friendships. Why? Because you want them to come to the next process. You got to keep moving them down into fellowship. How do you get them to fellowship? Because you had some of these bigger group meetings. Problem is some churches just have big social groups and never go beyond there. Typical small group Bible studies are somewhere in the middle, medium Bible studies. Our church is based on small groups. So about 70% of our people are in small groups. Just about everybody goes to, it's not real heavy, deep Bible study, but we understand that because that's where they're at. Yeah.
What we did was turn it into a health fair at the same time.
See, and
so,
that's bringing more people in.
So men prostate tests, blood tests, all that stuff. You know.
That becomes a social top level activity.
Prostate thing?
Yeah, you don't have to go. You go if you want to.
Now here's what happens though. I found in most groups, free prostates. Yeah, that gets them every time. They always want to come for that one. We're going to do a discipleship group. We're going to have this great theological thing from Piper. You get this amount of people, and you think, wow, we had 20 guys show up. That was awesome. Next time you do it, 5 guys show up. Oh, aren't they dedicated? Well, you just don't have that many guys in your church that are that focused on discipleship. The trick is to get these guys to go to up here and bring them down with them as they're going. Have the training, hey, the training is about this activity we're going to do up in this upper level, and have the expectation. Now, I had this problem where I thought everybody loved my small group, and I couldn't figure out why not 100% of the people would want to come. Because I missed the point that these people up in these top 3 level, they're on the edge of the church. They're showing up once or twice a month. And they show up once a month and they think they're dedicated to this church, or they just show up to the big events, the social events. Understand, how do you connect? Now, everything we do always has purpose. We never have a social event without something happening. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. But this is critical for leadership to understand understanding your people, what you're going to get out of them. Don't expect too much out of them, but keep discipling them downward into this closer relationship with Jesus. Any questions on that? Now, we're going to hit 33. I love 33. We got a bunch of these. Bring these out. In the back there. Let's see, I got a bunch here. This one here. That's where you wrote. Now, this is just to tell you about 33. Why this is important. There's a code on it. Let me grab this sheet. It's either on the front or in the back, right here. If you ever order 33 and use that code, you get free shipping. That's all I can get you. I can't get you a discount. You buy 33 from us, you buy it from Lifeway, you buy it from anywhere, it's all the same price. The only thing I can help you with is shipping. Why I like 33, yeah, you have a bunch of leftovers, is it speaks to all the learning styles in men. Typical men's programs are designed, in my opinion, my son doesn't like this, are designed from seminary guys who love reading, love books. The rest of the world, which is like 80% of us, struggle with all that, okay? Now, there's a place for reading, believe me. I force myself to read because I know it's good. 33 in their workbook, which is a critical part of their program, covers this. The first lesson, let's see, in their workbook, the workbooks are $15. At the end of it, there's supporting resources. Now, my wife, she can't read this, but she's not allowed to. But here's a book from Michael Gimmel, or here's one from John Piper and Wayne Grudem. Oh, now that's a light read. They give you 5 different books to read. If you want more information, well, you know, some of you, that's where you live. You love that. You'll have these read by next week, at least 1 or 2 of them. Not me, okay? But that's okay. But there's some references now. Here's a couple more pages back. There's some short stories. Here's me at the bathroom. The real stories that are dealing with the topic. It meets just where you're at. Now, another issue is what I like, fill in the blanks. I've got to listen. I can't be focusing on everything. All the answers are in the back. So I usually come with all my answers filled in. For some of you, you've got to fill in. That's how you memorize. That's how it's going to work for you. See, it works. They've done a real good job dealing with everybody's learning abilities and strengths in 33. Now, one thing, the old material is for 24 weeks. Yeah, somebody who's marginal in the church. Can you commit for 24 weeks? You know, it's not much time. Yeah, the new stuff comes out, this is what it looks like, 6 weeks. There's six-week sessions. They're independent of each other. Much easier. Hey, try it for 6 weeks. If you don't like it, don't come back. Now, Dara, it just never had a problem. You'll find it. That clip that we showed at the beginning of the sessions were from this series. It's really good. Yeah.
Quick thing on 33.
Yeah.
We've gone through Volume 1 and Volume 2 a couple of times.
Okay.
Volume 3 is getting ready to come out.
Yes.
But in our area, we have a lot of military. And if you have guys that are deploying or anything, Rick Caldwell is the director for Authentic Manhood. And if you have guys that are deploying overseas, they are really willing to help those guys take that with them. Because they have the articles that are in the books are copyrighted, but the handouts aren't. And so we can send PDF copies to those guys overseas so they don't have to pay for the books that are deployed.
Yeah.
And then you send, if your church sends them the videos, then we had one of our guys asked to do it. He did the first one, he had 5 guys. Next time he had 45 guys. And he gets asked for 100 more books, and we're like, hey, we'll do
Cool.
what we can, but that's how we found out that you can do PDF with that and help you guys deploy.
Now, if you go online, so you can get an app and you put it on your computer, and for I think it's $3 a session. You can, like, we had some guys in the Pentagon. They say, look, some of us are taking the train, some of us are driving. We'll meet at lunchtime and discuss what we watched during the morning sometime. So they all watch it separately on their PDAs. I'm sure they're never watching it on the Pentagon computer. I got a little side when I was in the military. Every quarter we had the list of the websites that guys are watching, that shouldn't be watching. It's just security issues, and because you're not supposed to be watching anything outside of military stuff. That's it. Anyway, it was always the top of the list was guys were listening to Caleb, and it was like that's a Christian radio station. You might, if you don't know, it was like. Yeah, that's okay. Yes, I have to get on them for that. That's really bad. They wouldn't. So anyway, there's a little side. So yes, and the old stuff was sort of like a marathon. This stuff, you're gonna watch it. It's fast. It's moving, and it's hilarious. Some of it. So let's see if this works better this time. Right off the bat. by the way, John Bryson is the speaker this afternoon. I think he's the next one. Yeah, he's our afternoon speaker. This is how it starts every week.
Guys, there was just something
Three
about
guys
the
in
last
community.
The definition of manhood. When I began to
If
think
you're not in
about
the herd,
that, I just thought to myself,
you're bait.
if I had that earlier in my life, just where would I be?
That's
To
right.
think about that, to reject passivity, to accept responsibility, to lead courageously, and then to invest eternally. I mean, that reshapes everything we're about.
Yeah, for me too. When I first heard that several years ago, it was like somebody kicked me in the rear and said, get up, get in the game, and do something. You know, don't just stand there like Adam in the garden.
Yeah, it puts that bullseye specifically on man's primal issue, and that's passivity.
Yeah.
And so, boy, to call that out and then to call us up into something else is exciting, which is exactly what we do in this session, the next couple of sessions, where we paint a picture of kind of the multi-dimensionality of masculinity.
Right. That manhood is not just one-dimensional. You can't act at home like you act at work. I mean, there are different sides, different faces, and we have to learn to embrace all of those and use them at the right time.
Yeah, there are four faces, right? Yeah. So we don't have to look at your face anymore. There are four faces of manhood. We're going to cover a couple of those.
There are. This session we deal with the king and the warrior. Next session, the lover and the friend. So today we're going to look in this session really at the righteous energy of the king, a lot about integrity and how to build that and what that looks like, and then the action-oriented, courageous energy of the warrior. So I'm excited to paint that vision.
I think, JB, you're up to date, so we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
That's great.
Now, every week it's different. Three guys talking is always the same, but after that, sometimes they'll talk right away. Sometimes they'll have a multimedia thing like this. They're doing multimedia. Sometimes they're serious. Sometimes they're hilarious. You never know, and that's what you got to do with guys. Keep their heads in the game, thinking about it. That's why they love sports so much. What's next? Don't know. Well,
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
We've always needed God, but today we need Him especially. We're facing a new kind of enemy. We're involved in a new kind of warfare, and we need the help of the Spirit of God.
Neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth can separate us from God's love.
hello.
Yeah, I tried to call you earlier to see if it's possible I'm gonna bring you out.
In these next two sessions, we're going to give you a perspective of masculinity that complements and expands our manhood definition. Our masculinity is designed by God to be multidimensional. Narrow or incomplete views of manhood will limit you. It'll hold you back from all that God created you to be, to do, and to experience. Unfortunately, our society has often depicted masculinity as one-dimensional. Men are viewed as only tough and unemotional, or as the overbearing CEO, or as the romantic ladies' man. These are often caricatures of masculinity, and they often dominate our culture's portrayal of men. The well-rounded man, or the man who can wield his masculinity timely and appropriately, is so rare these days that we've actually mystified holistic manhood. We've assumed that it's unreachable. We use a term like Renaissance man, which implies that the multifaceted man is a thing of the past. For example, we don't seem to believe that the man who can successfully lead a company can do it with integrity and honesty, while at the same time being passionately connected to his wife and kids and experiencing genuine friendship with other men. Many of us believe that such well-roundedness is unattainable, and we often pit those options as either or rather than both and. The Bible paints a different picture. It shows us men like David, not perfect, but a man who can write a psalm, play a harp, kill a giant, king a nation, and relationally connect with other men. I think this is what the world is looking for. Our cities, our workplaces, and our families need men who can step into all that God's created them to be. I think this is what we as men are looking for too. Instead of a narrow, one-dimensional caricature, we need a biblically based, broad masculinity that is multidimensional. The kind of masculinity that can move into multiple settings and express itself appropriately and powerfully when needed. We're going to talk about 4 expressions of manhood, 4 facets that need to operate in harmony, each complementing the other, each synchronized with the other, each balancing the other. We'll call these 4 expressions the 4 faces of manhood. Today we're going to discuss the first 2 faces, the king and the warrior. In the next session, we'll look at the lover and the friend. It's important to know that these 4 faces of manhood are not comprehensive or rigid categories. No man will fit perfectly into each of these categories all the time. They merely provide a helpful framework to move us past an inadequate, one-dimensional masculinity. Also, the 4 faces of manhood are not necessarily intended to reflect only psychological categories, but rather a point of reference to discuss the various roles, responsibilities, and relationships experienced by most men. It's also important to understand that each of these faces, in balance, bring out honorable and positive aspects of manhood. They can also get out of balance and be taken to extremes, in which case the honor will be replaced by ugly caricatures.
Okay. What I want to show you is, now, using this material is great, but typically how we use material in the churches, hey, we're going to have 33, it's the most wonderful thing, come out to this. And we put all our resources, all all the money that we put in reserve and cred accounts with, especially pastors do this, and so everybody comes out. And that's the end of it. A couple months later, we have another exciting. We're having a golf tournament, or we're going to have, in our case, it was a shotgun match. So everybody comes out to it, and then nothing. This is typical church programs. 2 or 3 times a year, 4 times maybe. You do these big programs, and it's exciting, but there's really nothing after it. This is all in the book, No Man Left Behind, by the way. Now, the problem with it is it produces no disciples. Now, okay, still how they create value. You have to have something big, something ISI. We've got churches with 40 plus guys coming to this. This is a big event. Great, that's wonderful. You always, before you even started this, should have been, what's the next step? What are we going to do the day after? Because these guys are going to be coming out of this saying, okay, I've had this hammer moment. Now what? Well, you've got to have something planned. Now, are you going to catch every single guy that comes? Are you going to catch all 40 of them? No. When we had it, we caught out of the time we were about 100. We had about 24 guys show up. We we caught about 8 of them afterwards that said, hey, I want to do something more. Great. Sometimes I get disappointed because they all 40 didn't come, or all 23. I'm looking for disciples, and we have to recognize that's going to be a small amount. But if you catch them and keep building, in a year time, they'll have effect. So watch what happens. So then you have something else after that. Now, ISI happens. Say we use that as our create value to capture momentum. We do 33. We're going to have, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have a 33 class. Come out to it. Great. 6 weeks later after that, what are you going to do? We're going to have another. We're going to take them to the next level. Again, you notice the cone? It's going down, farther and farther down. Now, with mine, what I did to sustain it, I said, look, during 33, they talked about long-term accountability, having relationships with guys for 20 years. And my group is, again, about 27-year-olds, most of them. And I said, oh, that would be great. I said, well, how do you think they did that? Oh, I think they probably, they met every week. Yeah, we saw that. What do you guys want to meet next week? Yeah, let's meet next. And I just fed off with everything they said. What should we do? And somebody said, well, how about we do a Bible study? Now, believe it or not, that can be the death of your program as well as the life. It all depends how you handle it. Because one of the ways that I've learned is sometimes just do, and I got to put this in parameters. I'm not saying this, but for me at that moment, I recognized they had no idea what a Bible study was. All they know is a Bible study is a book that they're going to read and open up and fill out the questions. I want to teach them how to survive on their own. Okay? I said, why don't we do something different? Let's read, we're going to start John 1, and we're going to read one chapter 5 times this week. And talk about it. Okay, we did that. By just sharing in the group, they started learning how to study the God's Word. Because somebody said, well, I saw this. I didn't see that. And they all saw something different. And by the way, I was even picking up like, wow, I didn't see that one either. And we all was learning together. We went through the whole book of John like that. And just reading one chapter a week. Now, maybe you go, well, that's a little too much. How about one chapter a day? That's fine. I'm just giving you an idea. But teaching them without teaching them how to study God's Word. We did that, and then hopefully by that time is over, then you have a big momentum, create momentum. Another 33 series, another type of big activity. The idea is, okay, you didn't have the 40 guys if we started with 40, but maybe you have 20 disciples, maybe 5 disciples. That's more than you had before. Well, if you did this 3 times in a year, 5 times, now you have 15 strong disciples that have built. Well, that sounds pretty good all of a sudden. And then another 15 the next year, again, your discipleship category is growing. The idea is, though, to continue on. Again, you have to study your guys. You got to know the tools in your toolbox. You bring in the right tools for them and study them and say, what's the next phase? What I've learned, and young guys, maybe you could appreciate input and see if I'm right. The last thing you want is be told where you had to go. But that's what we tell younger guys. Come into our study. If you want, we love younger people as long as they follow into us. What I've learned is I got to go love Ben's to their group. So what do you want? I had one guy and I told him this, so he went back to his church and figured out who was one of the key players. Said, hey, I'd like to just get to know you. Is there any time when you do a Bible study? Yeah, we get together with a couple guys every week. Oh, can I join you? Yeah, come on. He says, it was terrible, Todd. He said, for the first month, we never opened up the Word. They just jabbered. He said, and then after that 1 week, somebody did talk about something. But they're sharing life together. Well, 3 months into it, then all of a sudden he was asked, hey, you want to bring a Bible study to us? Now, he said they were doing Bible studies, but it was so scattered. Now, that was this. I want to be careful. That's not all younger men. That's a stereotype. But in his case, well, within a couple months, they asked him to do a Bible study. He came to me and says, I don't know a tool to use for young guys. What's a Bible study that they're going to connect with? You asked the right question. It wasn't just a Bible study. It was one that talked their language. So I gave him an Erwin McManus Bible study for something that spoke to what they were doing. He's just loved it. Yeah.
If it's new disciple growth, which is the objective.
Yes.
And as you look at it, without application, new disciple growth ends up to be just Bible study. So, are there any materials out there that move from new disciple growth to discipleship and application in the real world?
See, now this is the interesting thing. Eventually, what I found gets guys to have unofficial groups of accountability, because discipleship isn't. We think churches are linear thinking in their discipleship, knowledge, discipleship. Reality, it's I won't tell you how many years I finally figured this out. It's when life falls apart, discipleship happens. So how do I be there in their life, so when it falls apart, we can figure out what God's doing in the middle of this? It's eventually the smaller group, the accountability of 2 or 3 guys. That's where I find that real discipleship. Yes, you have to have God's truth. Believe me, that's the foundation. Otherwise, we're just idiots. So in that process, but there has to be a lot of opportunity to have accountability, responsibility with each other. And at the end of it, so you have to have long-term, because when life falls apart, who am I going to go to? It's only people that I've had this type of relationship long-term with. Now, you start out with, again, maybe 40, 10. It may only be 3 guys at the end of this part. But if there's 3 guys here, 3 guys here, 3 guys here, that's real strong discipleship is going to be happening. Now, there has to be wisdom there. There has to be, 3 ignorant people pulling their ignorancy doesn't get you very far, okay? Yeah, and there's a part of this that, yes, you have to have good curriculum helping yourself out on this journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. Now, here's another, stepping up. We're going to watch, we're going to see how this goes. This is an excellent curriculum. Not quite as good as 33, but really good.
Seeing a man who stays with his family even when it's difficult, rather than walking away. That takes courage.
Courage can be as simple as me knowing I need to interact with my wife in this area, but I know that if I do, this could happen. But doing it for her good, our joy, and the glory of God anyway. Then courage could also be pulling into your driveway and as a man, and even though you just worked 8, 10, 12-hour days, knowing your job's not over yet.
Every day, in every life, to demonstrate courage.
You notice they use all different ages, nationalities, all of this. They do a good job.
And courage is the ability to do the hard thing in every circumstance, despite the cost.
You're going to miss it. Without the pictures, we're going to skip it. He's in a toxic suit, and he starts talking through the mouthpiece, going into the disaster area, and he picks up a dirty diaper. And at the end of it, you have just received the non-man award of the year. You wimp. Yeah, it's a great little clip. The last person that speaks is from Roanoke. And so I used this last week, and it actually worked 2 weeks ago in Roanoke. Crawford Loritz. He was with Campus Crusade Vice President, sort of a bigwig. And he talks about being courageous, and he says, courageous is buried in Old Dominion Cemetery in Roanoke, Virginia. That's where my parents live. He says, it wasn't that my dad was amazing. He said, but he got up every day, and he talks about his dad as the most courageous person ever. It was really powerful. Now here's just, I love this little statement. I love this verse. 35. Let's read the whole thing. Jesus said to them, my food is to do the will of him who sent me, and to accomplish his work. Do you not say there are yet 4 months, then comes the harvest? Look, I tell you, lift up your eyes and see that the harvest fields are white for harvest. My challenge to you guys is, if the harvest fields are white for harvest, why are churches collapsing then? We got to figure out. We've got to go back again, restudy, research. Men's ministry is a lot of work. If you don't, you've got to read all these books that I've been throwing out to you to find out how to be a good teacher, to be a good discipleship maker. This book here, Sleeping Giants, Kenny Luck. Outstanding book. It's a leadership book. It's not the best reading, but it's going to give you concepts, a leadership team. I have a DVD series, and I think it's about 20, 25 minutes each session, and then you get to talk about it. But it'll get your mind thinking, how do I do a men's ministry? It only came out this past November. It's really new. Outstanding book. It's not, again, it's not easy reading. Well, man up, because leadership is hard. You got it, but you're going to have to learn to do this. And I can't teach it. But when we have great guys like this that know this, but that's part of it's part of your book. Again, it's called Sleeping Giants. I think it's on the first page.
Comment?
Yeah.
You said the book is not easy reading. I found it to be interesting. I received Deacon magazine.
Uh-huh.
The articles in there. And it's like 5 pages long, but it was awesome.
Good. I'm glad you. Yeah.
Because in return, we did a teaching on that in the men's leadership group. And we had 4 new guys to come in just to sample it. And they all went and joined the church 2 weeks later. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it. I mean, it's great material. I think it's just great stuff. I'm going to say this one is another Tony Evans, Victory in Spiritual World. It's a study of Ephesians 6. Now, I bought the swords we're using for the trophies this year, and I got this big Roman sword because I was thinking Ephesians 6. A pastor could use this in some sermon illustration instead of just have it in a case somewhere. After listening to this study, I realized I got the wrong sword. He did this Greek study, and he goes, that sword that he's talking about in Ephesians 6 is a short sword. Yeah. It's close in work. It's not a far distance. Your spiritual warfare is always dirty and close in. And I'm like, I got the wrong sword. But it's so cool. So we still got, let's see how this works.
He comes at the end of
Tony was here a couple years ago.
and gives
I think
the
in
last
Fredericksburg.
piece of the
So 3 years ago.
And he gives you the last piece right now in verse 17. He says, and take the sword of the Spirit.
I just love this section, so that's why I got to cut the sword issue.
Remember, the verb take means pick up as needed. The last 3 of the armors use that verb. The first 3 uses the verb to be. That is, this is the state you should always be in. But these last 3 deals with the verb to take. Pick up as needed or as appropriate. He says, I want you to pick up the sword of the Spirit. The sword of the Spirit. This is very important because this is the only offensive piece of weapon in the arsenal. Everything else is designed to hold you steady from what the enemy is seeking to do in the evil day. But now, in this last one, he has put a weapon in your hand. The soldier has 2 types of swords in the Roman army. The long sword, the sword that allows you to fight at a distance because it is extended. But the Greek word for sword here is not the word for the long sword, like the swashbuckling kind of sword that you would see.
We're going to have to keep moving on. My time's short, but great. Yeah, again, now, is that for every group? No. Know your tool. Know what you're going to use it for. But he's a powerful speaker. I mean, he's just one of my favorites. Not a fan. Another one that I just love. That book around here. Okay. Oh, there it is. It's a DVD. It's a book. Now, it's a strange DVD. First time I watched it, it's this guy that's having a heart attack and dies. Okay? And the pastor goes to the house. And you're looking at his life. It's sort of like the Christmas story about The Wonderful Life. Okay? But the pastor's talking about it as he's going through who this guy is. And so you look back at his life and how he's this nasty business guy that went to church. And then all of a sudden, a year or 2 early, before the heart attack, he has this crisis of belief, and he becomes a true follower of Jesus, and it changes everything. He quits his job, and it's just really powerful. Now, at first I looked at it, it was different. And then it's like, oh, I like different. But it's a powerful book about living out the Word, living out life, being a true follower of Jesus. The title comes from are you a fan or a follower of Jesus? Too many people in church are just fans of Jesus. They like Jesus. It's a good thing to do. but are you a fan of Jesus? Are you a follower of Jesus? No, he doesn't want you to be just a fan. Yeah. Great one. Now you can do this as couples. You can do it as men's. It does require some homework. That's okay. Some studies, again, there's all diversity out there, and I want you to be aware of that. But one that I highly recommend, Sticky Church. Small groups, I think, is a critical part of this. Larry does Osborne, like I know him. But Larry. Best small group study guide I've ever had. And not study guide, but a lesson on small groups. If you want to learn about small group, now this book looks impressive reading-wise, but actually, there's the funnel. That's where I stole that from. It's only about 150 some pages long. Very practical. Does a great understanding of how to use effective small groups, that they're about relationships. And where the challenge for me was, discipleship occurs with relationships. It's not the education. Now you have to have the education there. You have to have parts of that in there, because again, you have to have truth. But real discipleship happens when I fall down. When life throws me, we've got a class this afternoon. Yeah, I think it's this afternoon. Dick is doing on grief. Dick has lost 2 kids, one to cancer, two different analyses, and his wife. Now he understands grief and loss more than anybody I understand. But the concept is, I don't care if you lost a job, that's grief and loss. If you lose, it's all the same concept, but he talks from reality, and he learns more about God through those hardships. And I just heard a story, I'm like, oh, my heart goes out. But small groups, very practical, and I can't talk more about it, how good it is. If you want to understand small groups and use it effectively, please use it. Now here's another one, Navigators. It's on their table. Good discipleship book. If because there's times when you want just good, solid discipleship. You got a group of guys, hey, we're ready for this. We're no longer at the top of the funnel. We're 3/4 of the way down. We need a good discipleship. This has only been out less than a year. Love the Sword. You think we wrote it, Every Man a Warrior. It's from Navigators. The only odd thing, not odd, but the second book is about being a husband. So if you're dealing with a single guy, you probably want to go from book 1 to book 3. That works fine. The first class I ever took on marriage was when I was in high school. I wasn't married that old. And my pastor why are you, because there's 4 guys there up on the front row, and this class was called Sex and Marriage. And I'm like, well, why do you think we're here? They're high school guys. I said, no, we want to learn before we get married. I said, it doesn't, we all sat there, why wouldn't we be here? So we can be better husbands someday. So I'm not sure I agree with the concept not to do the second book, but just understand that that's what it's about. But it's a great systematic discipleship program. People need that. My time's getting short, so again, defining discipleship. We have, I told you I was going to give you a lot of handouts. This is simple. We use this, but I find it very effective. Pass them out around that way. Yeah, don't take half of them. This is the 1 Timothy model. You always say this when you're going to elect the deacons or elders. And it's more of a list you put up and say, disqualified, you can't be. Reality is, that's what every Christian should look like. That's not a disqualification. That's what we should be thriving for. So my question is, in your men's ministry, how are you doing teaching this stuff? Are you systematically saying, you know what happens? If you let everybody do what they want to do, there's certain things they're never going to touch because they don't want to deal with it. We as leaders say, you know what, we're going to go through this systematically because we know we got to touch on some of these issues. So just a little helpful thing to think about, how are we systematic in a 3-year program, 5-year program? How are we covering all these issues, are we? Bethel Seminary, I did tell you this. They're our sponsors, so I have to give you this out. You can pick them up on the way out. I'm not going to make it. That is the only place. It's an online course for men's ministry. It's the only one out there. You can do it online. It's sort of a neat way to think about men's ministry. Again, these are all the books that are on your handout. The Resolution, a great book. Sticky Church, 33. Guardrails, Andy Stanley. How do you live life? Do you have guardrails to protect you so you don't go too far off? Sort of a neat concept. The videos, it's just him at a sermon. He's good, but it's nothing dynamic or anything. But the concept is a powerful concept. Do you live life with safety precautions like I can't go? Now, this is much more than this, but I always think of Billy Graham when I think of safety. I remember hearing this years ago. He will never go into a motel room alone, and he never goes by himself when he does go. Somebody always clears out the room for him, make sure there's no women there or anything, and he never stays in a motel room by himself. He always has another guy or his wife with him. Guardrails. He's learned how to live life with guardrails, and you've never heard of any inappropriateness with Billy Graham. Smart guy. This book deals with those real issues that men deal with. Let's see. I think that's it. Yep, that was it. So a lot of information. I know it's like a freight train. That's why I gave you all those handouts. There's one final handout I want to give you, and this is a really important one. Because here's one of the questions you're going to have. Now what? Okay, you gave us this information. We're trying to figure out our men's ministry, and you're really not. Well, there's two parts I want to give. I have some of my business cards here. I have some on the table, resource table. We would love to have you come by for one of these lunches. We buy the lunch. We're not going to sell you anything, but we want you to come with a leadership crew and sit down and talk to us about men's ministry, what you're doing, where you want to go, what your struggles with. And we customize it literally to your church. We'll come here, but we'd like it if you come to us. We've had groups from Roanoke come all the way out. Why? We want you to think about it, because they had a great trip. They got to think about what is our issues. We said all the way in here for your 2.5-hour ride, think about what you want to talk about. So they came and they had a whole list. On the way back, now what are you going to do changing? How are you going to change? So that's why we really do want you to come to us. And plus we have all the resources. We can grab it all. We show videos. But here's another thing. 12 major needs you must address to initiate a ministry to men in your church. This is from a guy that for over 20 years has been working with church development, healthy churches. Go in, they have problems, he's called in to do surveys and whatever, and then he helps them become, and it's such a simple term, but it means so much, a healthy church. Here's 12 steps that he said he's found that they have to go through to get there in their men's ministry. You can use this, and he uses it for the church, but he uses it also in the men's because he says they're so closely connected. Now, it's not like check one, check two. A lot of them are that way, but be wise. This is just some ideas for your leadership team, again, to take this and say, what do you think about this? How does this apply to us? How are we doing this? Hey, this brings up a good idea. It's irrelevant for us, but it makes me think about this. So a lot of my conversations, it isn't about, I have all the great things. I'm getting your mind to think about what you really need to be thinking about. Because I don't know who you are. You're in a different area. I don't know your churches. But hopefully some of the stuff we talked about, get your mind thinking, saying, one, I need to know my men. I need to know the tools I need for them. So I need to study them. How am I going to do that? Well, we gave you a lot of books to read. Sorry about that. But a lot of videos. But to have a discussion with the leadership team, you gotta have a team. So any last thoughts, questions? And I'll hand this out as you're going out the door.
I got one.
Yeah.
Of course I do. Using the Bible for discipleship and study, meeting the needs of the men and the congregation in general, without any assessing tool to find out what your men need and what your congregation needs, how can you address it except by the shotgun approach, so to speak, or touch and go, and hope you get one or two?
Right.
Is that the approach that seems to be prevalent, or is there some other, shall we say, book or system that approaches more what needs are?
There are two philosophies on that. To actually do the handouts, do the surveys, get a real detailed description of that. Here's my problem with that. Obviously, I'm not in that camp.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's not value and there's researchers out there on that. The problem is, as leaders, if we don't know what our prayer issues are, we shouldn't be the leader. We're just out for a walk. Mm-hmm. We should be understanding our men and our struggles. And what frustrates me is when I hear people actually say, so guys, what do you want to do? Well, they're never going to do what they need to do. When I was in the military, I didn't want to go on those 12-mile hikes, but we had to go on them. Now, I knew as an NCO, that's where we had to, there are certain things because it is the right thing. As a leader, I should be knowing my guys, and I should be sensitive to the Holy Spirit and listening and being steady. If I'm not there spiritually, there's problems there too. But so I would say you have to be systematic and think, but it's more knowing where they're at. But again, in a room this size, I know a couple of you guys are going to go home and watch porn tonight. I know. There's a couple of you that are going to you had some major physical abuse with your wife probably. I say that now, I'm being a little broad here, but stats show me that, tell me that, right? Well, I cannot broad blanketly, do I have to deal with the issue of porn in groups? You betcha. You all need to have that. Do I need to, anger issues? You betcha, you all need it. That's next month. In 2 weeks, we got a great class on that. I say that to say there are certain general things we all need, and we have to be systematic. That's why we'll go through the discipleship. Are you really doing all that? Very few churches are systematic and really hitting it all. Now, when I say hitting it all, I know what I need right now. And I pick and choose wisely. My ministry team, I use that and say, hey, we need this, this, and this. Okay, then this, this, this. And eventually it's like, okay, we haven't covered any of these. Well, we systematically will cover them because I just know, well, it's a Bible thing. God says I need to know this stuff. But I customize it as I need to meet my men. I know my men. My team. Now, I don't know all of them. I have a sphere of influence. That's why I have a team. That each of us have a sphere of influence. So we come together and talk about how do we meet their needs. Not, to me, the other way is the tail running the dog. Now, there are some criteria out there. I'm not a big one on it, so I don't know them. So, to be honest. Did that answer you?
Yes, you did.
Okay. But be man and lead. But be a godly man and lead what God wants. So any last thoughts, questions? I apologize. We went through a lot of material. I hope you got enough handouts to really confuse you. But call us. Okay. Dismiss. We're done. Not too far late. Oh, I even forgot my walking stick. Oh, that's a great illustration.
Well, men, thanks for listening. I trust this message has provided practical encouragement to you in your journey with Christ. Please visit noblewarriors.org to learn more about how Noble Warriors works to help churches reach and build men. God bless you, friend.